Hey everybody, Questwise here, and today we're going to finish our three-part series on the Rifts Australia Worldbook. First two videos in this series, if you haven't seen them, go back in the catalog and check them out. The first week we talked about what had happened to Australia after the coming of the Rifts, the sort of coming of the cataclysm, and how the world changed, how things were different, how the landscape had evolved. In part two, we talked about the OCCs, the occupational character classes that you could play if you had set a game in Rifts Australia, and how they fit into the world itself. This week, we're going to cover the rest of this book. We're going to finish up what's in the third part of this book. And there's a lot of stuff to cover, so we're going to get started right away. First of all, there's a description, a section on the two cities that are left, two major cities that are left. It's Melbourne and Perth. Both rather unaware of each other, very isolated, very fortified cities that protected the people during the apocalypse and afterward, and probably saved hundreds of thousands of lives in doing so. Inside the cities, there are places of great wealth, businesses and sports arenas, parks, restaurants. Think of large metropolises, and that's what you're going to get. And while it seems very safe and secure on the inside, the governments of each city are very strict, and they have some very harsh laws when it comes to certain things like psionics and magic and mutations. So in that regard, rather like the Coalition of North America from the Rifts core book and such, but on a different scale. They have their own sort of structure to their governmental systems, their own sets of laws and styles of governing, and each has their own sort of feel and touch them. And in the book, it's separated up into both cities and kind of tells you what major places of note and things to see and people of note in each city. And then there's a small section after that describing about the similarities between the cities and such as well. Very interesting part of the book, especially if you want to set a whole campaign in one of these major cities. Or, as we talked about last time, some of the OCCs were people from the outside who had merchant traders who had come to deliver raw goods from the outside world, which is sort of hush-hushed. The common people who live in the cities who hardly ever leave, if they leave ever in their lives, are completely unaware of that kind of thing goes on as well. After that, we get some city-based occupational character classes. Words are not my thing this morning. So we get the administrator, the cyber specter, which is sort of because a lot of the revolutions and rebellions have been quashed. This is sort of almost like a matrix. It's a cyber rebellion that exists completely on like computer-based society of hacking and strikes against the government in that regard. There's the city police force, the city police tactical response group, a lot like the SWAT team. These are the characters that are in charge of carrying out the laws that the administrators set. And there's some cool aspects that can be brought to a campaign with these OCCs. It would be much like running sort of a coalition campaign where all the players are playing coalition characters, which I've done before and has turned out to be very, very interesting to see how the players deal with the fact that these lawmakers and rulers are very downright like dictators and evil, and how the player characters dealt with those themes as they're playing in a character in that realm. So to play a city police officer or a tactical response group officer would be a lot like that in that regard, and it would be interesting to see how campaign of that will play out. Then we also have the Sportsman, which is your your sports star. These are athletes and of sports that have sort of taken root in the Rifts world, kind of gladiator style type sportsman. The technologist, somebody who's very keen with gadgets and devices and gizmos and that kind of stuff. The arrow jock, which are pilots that patrol the city, the kind of the Air Force. The infantry grunt, which is the military arm of a soldier in the cities. The special operations soldiers, Navy sailors, stuff like that. So there's a lot of cool ways to play out games set in the cities of Melbourne and Perth. There's also some suggestions on OCCs from some of the other books that you can play, like City Rat, Cyberdoc, some of that kind of stuff that would still fit into this realm of Rifts Australia as well too. Following that, we get a whole section on mutant RCCs, racial character classes, and how they're viewed within the cities and without. And these are specific to Australia themselves. And it kind of gives me a little bit of a vibe of After the Bomb, creating mutant animals or mutant characters that live in this sort of post-apocalyptic world. And I think you could totally use After the Bomb in conjunction with this as well too, if you wanted to play something a little bit more than what they offer here. And they give you quite a few. I'll always say this wrong. It's kind of a tongue twister. Koala, which is a koala mutant creature. There are shadow people. There are the Mokoloi, which are reptile folk as well too. So they give you a few that are specific to Australia, but I really feel like you could use After the Bomb to create any kind of any animal that you would want to that would fit within the Rifts Australia world. Kangaroos, wallabies, all that kind of stuff. Tasmanian devils. It'd be really, really cool. So you get a whole section on mutant racial character classes that you can use as player characters, and it also goes into detail about how these mutant characters are sort of viewed within the cities if they already live there, and what happens if somebody is born that exhibits magical abilities or psionic abilities or mutations of any sort, and how they're sort of looked upon in the cities, and how it's completely different from out in the wild, in the outback and stuff as well. We get a section on monsters. A lot of great monsters and stuff in here that are very specific to Australia, giant cockroaches, stuff like that. Yowie demons, we get a lot of demons and stuff in here as well. One of my favorites is the Sand Fiend, which is a kind of cross between the sandworms from Dune and the Sarlacc pit from Star Wars. Kind of a cool blend of the two. Really cool creature or monster that you can throw at your players living out in the outback and such as well too. And then to round out the whole rest of the book, we get a section on weapons and equipment and skills specific to Rifts Australia. And there's some really, as always in all of the Rifts books, there's always some really cool equipment, some really cool weapons, really cool power armor, and that kind of such as well. So Rifts Australia Part 3, we're rounding out this book finally. It's been a really, really fun, really good ride. I'm excited to hopefully bring this to a table soon. It's been, I think I've only played, maybe run 1 or 2 games set in Australia, but I've always been really interested in the Australian lore and such as a whole, up and above and beyond just Rifts. So this is a really exciting book for me to reread, and as always, really well written. Lots of great stories. That's what I really like about the Palladium series of books, is that there's more to it than just rules and stats and stuff. There's lots of cool entries that are fun to read, to see what the world is really like after the coming of the Rifts and the apocalypse. Next time, we are going to head sort of to the other side of the world, and we're going to explore Rifts South America, and we'll delve into this. This probably will be at least a 2-parter, But I'm excited to share this one with you as well too. In our exploration of Rifts Worldbooks, we're going to be heading to South America next time. So until next time, stay safe. Game on, my friends. I'm Questwise, and I am out.